This is Seahawks Stories, 50th Season Edition, presented by Emerald City Athletics.
Hi again, everybody, and welcome to the Seahawks 50th season, our podcast. Jim Zorn, yours truly, Steve Raible.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Jim. We've had a great deal of fun talking about all of the things that made the Seahawks, starting back in that first season of 1976. We were both lucky enough to be there. You went on and had a great career here. I had a so-so career, but I've been with the team ever since, as we both have been around this organization for pretty much all the 50 seasons. You took a little time to go back east and coach other places.
Sure.
But so we've been talking about a lot of different subjects. If you haven't seen all the podcasts or listened to them, it's time that you did. Meantime, we've got a very special conversation to talk about today, and that is a guy who meant a lot to both of us within the organization. He wasn't a member of the team, but at times it sure felt like he was, and that was the one and only Pete Gross, the first voice of the Seahawks. When did you first meet Pete?
I met Pete right away, and I remember not really knowing that he was the play-by-play guy because he would come down after games.
Right.
And I always remember him because he had this little high voice, you know.
Yes,
but
did.
he had an excitement in that
Yeah.
voice, and it just drew you right in.
Yeah.
Everything was important. Everything was exciting. But I remember him at my locker after games, after showers, and he would just sit back and listen to what other questions. And then when he'd come in to ask a question, it was almost not positive, not positive, but he was never trying to catch an athlete in any of the interviews he ever did. He wasn't trying to catch an athlete or even expose something that you did poorly. He was always asking you questions about, what was really going on and how did you feel, and that's what I remember about Pete Gross. Really trustworthy, and it wasn't soft. They weren't softball questions,
Right.
But it was always positive. How about you?
Well, I remember Pete, and one of the things that he taught me, and I went to work with him after I retired. One of the reasons I did retire was because of Pete, frankly, and the opportunity that he gave me and the station gave me. But one of the things I remember, and other players have said this too, so many times, guys or reporters in a rush, they got their little tape recorder or whatever, and they just kind of step in and throw a question at him. And I think Jacob Green was the first one to tell me this, that he said he so respected Pete because Pete always walked up and said, "Hi, Jacob, can I ask you a couple of questions?" And just even that to break the ice a little bit and to make it more of a friendly sort of conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what they were with Pete. They were conversations.
Yeah.
I met him same as you. I probably met him early on in '76, maybe at training camp. He was over there for almost all of training camp, and then he'd broadcast the games. And pretty soon you kind of figured out who this little guy with a tape recorder and a microphone was.
Did you start bugging him and stuff? Did you start saying, "Hey, Pete, give me a chance"?
Not right away.
Okay.
But after a while, I probably did. But what was interesting was the last game of my senior year at Georgia Tech, second to last game against Navy. I blew out my knee, tore my medial collateral ligament, tore some other stuff. And so I didn't get to play in our final game, which was always the biggest game of the year against Georgia. And it was a nationally televised game. But I asked permission, and they said, okay. And I sat upstairs in the radio booth with the two broadcasters for the Georgia Tech football team.
Okay.
Both of whom, one was a former player from the late 50s and early 60s, a guy named Kim King. He was the analyst. And I can't remember, Al Seraldo was sorry, folks, this is deep. But Al Seraldo was a play-by-play guy, and he'd been it for like 100 years. I just wanted to hear how that worked. I had done a lot of interviews and stuff with all those guys. So they let me sit up there. I had this big cast on my leg, had knee surgery. And it was the safest place to be, too, off the field. And I just thought, wow, this is fabulous. I love this interchange. I love this concept of seeing what you're seeing and then describing it and relaying it to the listeners. And so when I met Pete, it was sort of that way, like, oh, you're the guy that.
You kind of correlated the two.
And that he's up in the booth calling the game. And there was none of this. In those days, you didn't find stuff on YouTube. There was no YouTube.
Right.
There was none of that.
Right.
So the only way you ever heard a play call was if you happened to be listening to the radio when they played some of those highlights. And
Well, yeah, but you did not start as a play-by-play.
no.
So when you started, did you take over for somebody?
Yes.
And you were our color guy.
I became the analyst. I'm terrible with names.
Was it a player or
he was a former player at the University of Washington, and he was the first color analyst with Pete. And I'm so sorry because I've known his name for 50 years.
It wasn't Bob. Ron. It wasn't.
No. Rondo was the play-by-play.
He was the
guy.
play guy.
But the gentleman, and he was a star, and he went to play in the NFL. He played in New York with the Giants, and then he became an analyst here because he was a local guy. The thing was, after the '81 season, San Francisco, the 49ers hired him as their analyst. So suddenly that job was open.
Okay.
At the start of the '82 season.
But see how cool this is?
Oh.
You forget this guy's name.
Yeah.
That's because he was meaningless. Nobody will ever forget your name.
Oh,
that you
please.
work with Pete Gross.
Well, I'm sure they will. In fact, many have. In fact, as I get older, I'm forgetting my name. So, it all kind of evens out. But, gosh, now it's driving me crazy. Don Heinrich, for crying out loud.
Right. Yeah, I should have remembered that too.
So
so when he left
south,
okay.
And so, the end. I know you don't remember this, but at the beginning of the season of '81, I had that collapsed lung, so I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks.
I do remember that.
Yes.
I threw a pass, and then you never got up.
Well, actually, I got up and came in for another play,
gosh.
and I had to run a clearing out route for Steve again, and sprint downfield. And by the time I got down to the 50 yards downfield, I couldn't breathe. And I thought, what the heck? I came back to the sidelines, and the trainer grabbed me, and he said, you're just out of shape. And I said, I can't, Jimmy, White said, Jimmy, I can't breathe. And so he goes over and looks at me, he says, it sounds like a collapsed lung, but you wouldn't have a collapsed lung. And pretty soon, now I'm starting to get some blood coming up, and he says, we need to get you out of here. So they threw me on the van and took me to the hospital. And then just as we were pulling out at the Kingdome, they stopped and they brought Joe Norman in. He had just torn his knee up. So the two of us go to the hospital together. And so we get there and we take care of that. Finally come back, missed the first 6 games or whatever, came back and played. You didn't remember me anymore, so you never threw to me. And that was okay. I understood. Paul Johns came in. And
you were being punished.
Paul kind of came in and kicked my butt out of the way, and that's okay. So now we come to '82, and we're over in Kirkland, and we're all working out, and we had workout coaches we didn't have before.
It's off season.
Joe Vitt was now the new guy who was coming in to help us in the off season. So I was ready to go. I was ready to come to training camp, and then in the middle of June or early June, I get a call. I've told this story 100 times. Sharon gets a call from Pete. I'm in Spokane playing a charity golf tournament. And Sharon at home gets a call from Pete, and Pete says, Steve there? No, he's out of town. Sharon, I need to ask you something. Our color guy, blah, 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 Don Heinrich, just went to the 49ers, and we have this opportunity here at Cairo Radio. And we think Steve would be great. Because I had filled in for Wayne Cody on radio for like 3 years.
Yeah. And what I remember, because I think I helped you out one time, if you all didn't know, Steve Raible did TV marathons and
telethons,
TV telethons. TV telethons for our public television, broadcasting.
Yeah,
and I'll never forget. I think it could be like 2:00 in the morning, 3:00 in the morning. You did that shift.
Yep.
Hey everybody, and I said, what are you doing? And I think you said, hey, I'm going in. At some point I want to go into broadcasting.
Yeah.
And you were paying your dues.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
You have to learn.
That was
someplace.
very impressed. That was very. I was impressed, but it was impressionable.
Yeah.
That you had done that work previously. So Pete sought you out.
Yes.
And that I think is pretty good. So he gave you an opportunity.
He did. And I'll go back one step. Sharon and I got married in June of '81. At the end of June, you were there at our wedding. You know that. And instead of taking a honeymoon, King 5 TV, since I wasn't affiliated with any station at that point, and I knew I was going to go back and play in 81, King 5 said, hey, because I'd been on a couple of their shows before, and they said, hey, we have a morning show, Seattle Today.
Right.
And our guy, Cliff Lenz was his name.
Cliff
Cliff
Lenz.
is on vacation. You want to come in and do a week? And I said, well, yeah, when is it? And they said, it's such and such. I said, well, that's like when I was going to take my honeymoon.
Right.
And they said, oh, well, that's when he's gone. Okay, Sharon, I'm going to go do TV for a week. And she was okay with that. And because she knew it was a chance for me to learn.
Right.
So all those things led up to Pete calling and saying, we've got this opportunity. And he said, also, we have 2 other opportunities at Cairo. There's a magazine show called PM Magazine.
Right.
Their host just left, their co-host. He went to Dallas. And we have a sportscaster job that's open behind Wayne, Cody, helping on the TV side. And we think Steve could do these things. But he's got to quit playing football. He's got to retire. He obviously can't do that.
Right.
So that was, Sharon said, when do you have to know? And he said, well, we need to know in the next week or so. And Sharon
What was
said,
the priority when you and Sharon talked about it and you saw all 3 of those opportunities? Some of them were temporary.
Yeah.
Did you see the long range goal?
Yeah. And part of that was the friendship I had built up with Pete and Wayne.
Okay.
Because they both explained to me that, and I knew it,
They were
as
going
a football player.
Yeah, and they were going to bat for you.
Absolutely. And you knew as a football player, this isn't going to last forever. I mean, how many players have 12-year careers, something like that? Steve was in there 14 or
14
whatever.
years.
That's more than 3 times, 4 times the average expectancy. I beat it by 2. I had 6, and 3 years is the deal. So talking to Pete over those years, what do you want to do? What are you thinking about? Well, you can think about this, and maybe you could do that, and whatever. So he was the one that sort of helped plant that seed along with Wayne. And so ultimately we became partners on the broadcast. I retired in 82 and before the 82 season, and then had a chance to work with.
Well, you guys worked really well together. How was the color? Everybody says color, but you say analyst.
Analyst, yeah.
How was the analyst role different than play-by-play? Because you've been in one so much longer than the other now.
Right. Analyst is what we as former players do. Why did they just run that? Why didn't it work? What do you expect them to do next time? Tell me about the overall about this team. Why are we a team that likes to run every so often 3 tight ends? Those kinds of the big football kind of picture ideas.
Did Pete lead you into those those thoughts and answers?
Oftentimes.
Yeah.
But Pete had a system, and he'd been doing play-by-play since at University of Pacific is where he started. He came out of the Bay Area. He did Washington football for a while on radio, and Sonics basketball for a while on radio and TV.
Yeah.
Or TV, not radio, Bob Blackburn.
He's a guy that you wanted to listen to.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. He did it all. Yeah. And so you wanted to learn from it.
Right.
But he had this thing. We're sitting in the booth, and for those who don't know how a booth is arranged for a broadcast, there would be the analyst. I'd be the play-by-play. The stats guy would sit right here between us. And he'd always said, listen, I know you're not going to have something to say on every play, but when you have something to say, put your hand out here so I can see it, and then I can, lead into you. And if I don't see your hand, I'll just keep talking. So I thought, okay. So I'm sticking my hand out there. Pretty soon it's like waving out a window or something. Pete, I'm going to say something, so why don't just let me do it? And then after a while it developed into that. Like he would then just lead me into whatever, or he'd just stop and as a play-by-play guy should do every so often, just shut up and let the analyst take over and explain what had happened or didn't happen.
You didn't have to stick out your hand your whole career, though.
No. It took probably most of that first year of 82.
Yeah.
And then things took off because, we've talked about this. Chuck came in 83 and end up in the, playoffs, win in Miami, go to the AFC Championship game. So it just ratcheted up and for guys, for players, they say this about players, well, they say it about broadcasters. When you've gotten there, you think it's easy. Now we'll be back here every year, and it ain't so easy.
No, it's not.
And
Things have to happen.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it was just a treat to work with him. I got to watch him prepare. I still do things on my spotting board that he did because I watched him do it and I saw it was effective. And guys today, I mean, a lot of guys, they're way so much smarter than me, but they're on their iPads. So they have all the players, all the information. They can just hit a keystroke and all that. I can't do that.
I've seen your board,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's this big.
Yeah, and
it's not.
well, and that's
And then
'cause
you
of
have to
the
flip it
eyes.
over, right?
Yeah, and I've had the
Offense on one side, defense on the other.
And the printing has gotten bigger over the years, and the cheaters have gotten more powerful over the years. But yeah, it's a godsend, and that's part of the preparation. And you know, some play-by-play guys around the country, more of the national guys than local guys, but there are companies that actually make play-by-play flip cards for broadcasters, and they'll go do all the research and they'll put all the notes on there. Well, I'm an old school guy. I learned by writing stuff down and trying to remember it, and then I can recall it.
Then
for the game.
do you tape over the ones that are gone
when guys get
and then you put the new guy
in? Yeah, I mean it is absolutely old school. It's exactly what Pete used to do, and again, that's just kind of the way I learned to do it. And if I had to change now, I just have to.
Well, when you do it yourself, there's something about when you stick that new name up there and his information.
Yeah.
You remember it.
Now, one thing Pete did that I tried to do early on, I can't do it because I'm not that good, not that smart. But he was also the sports director for Cairo Radio all those years that he did play-by-play. That was his main job. So he'd do 4, 5, 6, 10 newscasts every day as morning drive through the early afternoon radio.
Yeah.
And then Wayne comes in and takes over, and he's the evening radio guy.
Right.
Wayne was our sideline reporter, if you remember.
Right.
Wayne, we went to Tampa Bay one year, and Wayne was sitting on the end of the bench where we're doing pregame warm-ups, and all of a sudden he does this, he sort of nods off, and then he falls off the end of the bench onto his side, and he knocked the wind out of himself for obvious reasons, and because he had to do a Sonics game somewhere, and then he flew into Tampa on all-night flight, and he was not the healthiest guy anyway.
Right.
So this was this crew that we had of me and Pete and Wayne, and it was such a great learning experience for a young broadcaster. But all those little tricks that I sort of learned from Pete, it was so helpful.
It makes me realize the honors that Pete has gotten from the Seahawks. Were
they were
legit. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, he had, you'd say, how does a guy earn it? You don't just give a guy these kinds of things, the Ring of Honor,
right?
Which is, I think, a pretty cool deal. You're up on the, his name is up on that stadium.
Yeah.
His name is on a building saying the Pete Gross House.
Yes. It's remarkable. There are so many aspects to Pete Gross that a lot of people probably didn't know, and why should any of the young guys today know who Pete Gross was unless you grew up here? And even now, the guys who were the young guys on this team, if they grew up in the region, they're too young to remember that. They weren't born when all that happened.
I remember Steve Largent and I walked Pete out on his last days.
Yeah, I want to talk about
and not
that whole process.
And what an honor for us. And you don't realize it. At the moment, you don't realize the honor it was to be able to do that. I do now.
Well, let's go back. So Pete Gross is our initial play-by-play guy, and he's literally becoming, an institution, and everybody around the league knows him. And then in 1989, he goes in for a checkup, and he's not feeling well, and they discover cancer. And it was a pretty virulent form of cancer. I believe it was kidney, could have been bladder too, or liver.
I did not know what type it was.
It ended up spreading. And in those days, you didn't have, obviously, the technology and the medical care that you have today. But for the time, he got the best. And I remember he'd be so tired after games. So imagine we've all had family, friends, relatives who've had cancer and who had gone through treatments, and how literally debilitating the treatment is for you, let alone the cancer. And he would finish up a game, and he'd just be so tired. And I'm just wondering, gosh, how long can you do this, Pete? I mean, are we getting closer to a cure here for you? Are you in remission? What's the deal? He didn't ever like to talk about it. And then,
and rightly so.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody really knew what was going on.
Right.
You might have known
We knew
the details, but
Yeah.
he didn't.
he had
didn't-
he during the season he would
Mm.
have a pack on his belt that would slowly inject chemo into his system
Mm.
during a game. So he had this
Mm.
on his belt. So it got to the point as we got into '92 that it was pretty apparent that that it was going to get the best of him, and he really slowed down, and he couldn't do all the games. And there was finally Steve Thomas, terrific broadcaster, wonderful guy, also worked at the station, at the radio station. He was sort of the backup.
He stepped in.
He stepped in. I stayed on as the analyst, and Steve did a great job. And Wayne stayed as he was still the sideline guy. And as the season went on, Pete could not do the games as we got closer and closer. And I guess I'm betting Gary Wright, once again, the great Gary Wright, had a big hand in this. But Tom Flores was also the coach at the time.
Yeah.
We played a Monday night game against the Denver Broncos. And we knew the time was coming. His time was short. And somebody made the decision that Pete Gross ought to go. Now, you were already a member at the time.
91.
Steve was in there.
89.
Yeah, and he was the first.
Yeah.
So there were only a couple of you guys that had been inducted
90,
into the
yeah.
Ring of Honor
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, it was Steve and then me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to have this opportunity for a guy like Pete Gross, who was not a player, was something that was kind of unheard of,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And at any rate, we get to that Monday night game, and Steve Thomas is doing the broadcast. He's the play-by-play. And we knew what it was. Was it halftime or?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
It was
halftime.
halftime.
They had Wayne and I go up stairs in the 300 level to hold the canvas over the name.
Oh, okay.
And you and Steve ushered Pete out. He had ridden out to the field on a golf cart.
Yeah.
And you guys stood him up. And he mustered an amazing amount of energy for that day
Yeah.
and that night. And then we made the announcement, pulled the canvas up. Cody and I are up there bawling like a couple of kids. And Pete had this great smile on his face. You guys helped him back to the car.
I have a picture of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Photograph of it. Yeah.
And then he goes home, and Bev, his wife, called me. That was a Monday night. She called me Tuesday and said, I went over Tuesday and spent a couple of hours with him. And
Was he at home?
yes, he was heavily sedated. But he, obviously he recognized me, and we talked a little bit. He didn't talk much. He didn't have much energy, and he passed the next day. So he was, and he was 55. I mean, he was young. He was a kid.
Yeah.
We're in our
Right.
70s now.
Right.
Imagine
Right.
what we were doing at 55. We were
Right.
still in the throes of trying to get keep our careers going, and you're welcoming grandkids into the world, and he didn't have a chance to see any of that. It was really sad, but because the end was there on that very high note. So now skip ahead a couple of years, and a couple of people at Cairo Radio, one of the sales guys and a couple of managers, they said, we need to do something in Pete's honor. So they start working with the Hutch, Fred Hutchins Cancer Research Center, where Pete was treated, to develop this idea of the Pete Gross House. They had done it at other cancer facilities around the country.
So it hadn't even started yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
I thought it had already
And
been.
it just so happened that Jacob Green's father also died of cancer almost the same time. And so Jacob, just say the words Pete Gross, and Jacob starts to cry
Yeah.
because he appreciated Pete so
Yeah.
much. And he became a huge person in that funding effort.
Yep.
His golf tournament for years has funded
Still
that.
going.
Yeah. So Pete drew those kinds of people to him. And it was remarkable. And they built the Pete Gross House where families of cancer patients go to stay while the patient is being treated. They have a school there for the kids. It's a remarkable institution,
Yeah.
and we helped build it. It's been 25, 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it's just an outstanding opportunity for folks. And it's all in Pete's name. And he was such a great guy. And you know the other thing about Pete, and I don't want to make him out to be a saint because nobody's a saint, at least none of us walking on the earth today. Now maybe there are a few, but he loved. We'd go to dinner back in New York when we play a game back there, and he had lots of friends who lived and worked in New York, either worked for the league or worked in radio stations. So we'd all get together and we'd go to some place, in the Bronx for dinner, and it was just remarkable. The people he knew and the laughter.
I was just going to say,
gosh.
anytime I remember Pete, he just enjoyed the moments that he cherished the moments that he had, right? And I do think that when you listen to him, he's genuinely excited.
Yeah.
It wasn't a phony broadcast at all. He wasn't trying to muster up.
Right.
He really liked the Seahawks. If you go back and hear his plays, and we get to see old film of his voice, of us blurry because there was no HD.
No.
Right? HDMI, what?
Yeah.
Anyway, when you hear him, you can just hear the genuine excitement about it. And that rubbed off on you as well, because I can hear you.
Without
I don't hear
question.
you being Pete, but I hear you understanding, hey, I either like this or I don't, but I want the fan to know I'm right there with them, because I think you really enjoy yourself
Absolutely.
in the games. You're intense when you're analyze, or not. You're not an analyst when you're doing your play-by-play.
When I first started doing play-by-play in 2004, I can't tell you how much I called on that knowledge of working with Pete, and went back and listened to a lot of Pete's games, and heard him call touchdowns that you threw to me.
Right.
Weren't enough of them, but he threw touchdowns to me, folks. And I'll never let that go. I'll never let that go.
I regret it. You were open, and I just turned you down.
But the phrase, I mean, it sounds stupid, but touchdown Seahawks. That's how he called it, and he always told me the reason. Was yes, JSN might have caught that pass. Yes, Ken Walker III or Sean Alexander might have run that touchdown in. But it was the Seahawks who scored. It was the entire offense that scored, or the entire defense on a pick six. And so I never forgot that. And so when I started doing it, I just thought that was the most natural thing in the world. That made the most sense. Touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to carry that tradition.
Yeah.
And so we talk about Pete, who we lost back in 1992. As great a guy as there was, and one of the players that he had the ultimate amount of respect for was Kenny Easley, who we also now just lost the last few.
I got my Easley
You
button.
got your Easley button on, 45 button on.
Yeah.
Kenny Easley might have been one of the greatest athletes I ever saw at the position. And he was as proud a man and as talented a football player and as intelligent a football player as I think I've been around. I only was able to play with him for 1 year. You had more than that time with him. He was a leader, sometimes in directions that not everybody wanted to go on teams, like during strike years. But he had a sense for the greater whole, the greater good. But my goodness, we watched him make plays that he'd take off. He'd stick those big hands out there and intercept a pass. And he was gone. I mean, he looked like a gazelle racing down the sideline.
I think I read, because I didn't know, I think he scored 5 times off of interceptions or maybe a fumble or whatever. Yeah. But he was a great player. I asked him one time, because he was vicious as well. When
the enforcer.
Yes. And I said, well, how do you, what about this reputation? What are you doing? He said, anytime a receiver, usually a tight end, because he was inside as a strong safety, when a tight end goes up for a ball and he's got his arms up, he said, I might let him catch it early in the game. He said, but what I do, he said, I cut my hands and I hit the guy as hard as I can in the ribs with the knuckles on my thumbs. And so he lets the guy go, boom! Oh. And he hits him on both sides at the same time. He tries to time it up. This is what he told me, and I went, ooh. And he goes, just hit yourself a couple times with your knuckles, your thumb knuckles.
Gracious.
He said, I would lay into a guy. And he said the next time he would go up, he'd go up like this. It's about as high as his hands would go.
Yeah.
But he could really hit people. And for him, it was all about timing too. It was like, about, you talk about that bang, bang, bang. Yeah, he was definitely in that realm.
You look and see, and as a guy, the guys have been involved with this franchise then from the beginning. You look to see that tradition that Kenny started, that kind of tall, long, angular guy, had those big shoulders,
and his range of
huge
wingspan. of wingspan. Yeah,
go to Cam Chancellor, big body guy, control the middle of the field, and now you got a guy like Nicky Manwari for the Seahawks, the same kind of build, a little bigger, maybe a little faster, but that's this tradition of this big, tough, enforcer type of safety has kind of reigned true here in Seattle all the way back to 1981 when Kenny Easley was a rookie.
And the intelligence, the football, there's football intelligence, but he was intelligent in many ways.
Yeah.
But being able to anticipate, and you've studied video, and you see something, and you say, I know where this play's going before it even goes. And then when you show up, he always showed up with a really bad attitude as well, because he, I don't know about missing tackles, but I remember I wanted to stand up and be a part of the team even when our defense was on the field.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of these plays that Dave Brown would make, Kenny Easley would make, and it was something to watch.
Before there was a Legion of Boom, there was a pretty good secondary here, and those two guys were definitely a part of it. We lost Kenny. The family has not released all of the details, but he had pretty serious health issues for a long, long time in his life, passed at 66 here, and will be missed. Had a successful career after football, obviously, and eventually came back, was inducted into the Ring of Honor, goes to the Hall of Fame, the Pacific Northwest Football Hall of Fame as well.
He's got a Kenny Easley golf tournament that they fundraise for.
I think I can't remember if this last year he was able to come out here. His health had been really deteriorating.
He did not come out. I don't think he came out this year.
So we miss Kenny. We think about him on this day that we talk about Pete Gross, two of the greats as part of the Seahawks. And it's always, my friend, good chatting with you, even if it's about two guys who have passed, one many years ago and one just in the last weeks. But they were our friends. They were our colleagues.
Both inspired.
Absolutely. Inspired us to hopefully what we have gone on to do, and maybe we can carry a little of that legacy on for years to come.
Well, you've done a great job with it.
Well, thank you, my friend, as you have as well.
He would be pleased with the legacy you're leaving and that you've carried on.
I think he'd be happy. All those guys, all of us that he had a chance to interview in those days, I think he'd be so proud of all of us and what we've become, because again, we were just kids back then, and we've done okay, not bad. That is this edition of Seahawks Stories, the 50th season variety. So glad you could be with us once again. We have more to talk about. We will continue these, but until then, see you next time.